All
So again, I think just the main things I need to do now is get the log in, log out, and all of that stuff set up to where
right.
it can, and again, I've never done Firebase before, so this is going to be a new a new thing.
Yeah,
So
this is going to be a new approach here because I do remember that in that assignment you sent me. I just want to look at the message again here.
mhm.
Let me see here. So in terms of the project requirements here, let's see. Okay, so again, 4 to 5 components. I see that we've got currently 5 in there, but I think we're not using one of them just because that error that was happening last time.
Mhm.
Um, I see a custom hook, which is again like something we'll have to build out ourselves. Like we're utilizing the use effect and use state hooks, but we'll have to create our own custom hook that takes advantage of either one of these. I mean, I'm not sure if they say custom hook here. I'm not sure if they want us to build out something that leverages use effect and use state, those 2 hooks. But I'm gonna come back to that one. I just want to go through the list here. Fetch data from API. We already have that happening.
Mhm.
CRUD operations for Marvel characters in this case would be books, right? We have that.
Correct. Mhm.
We do not have the login logout functionality, nor do we have the hosting. Um, and we do have routing already done, and forms to create, update your data via React hook form. Okay. So let me look up this one real quick here to see React hook form. Okay. All right. So when they say React hook form, they're basically saying in this case, I'm going to drop this into the Zoom chat. Um, when they're talking about React hook form, it looks like this particular extension. I haven't used this before in React, but it looks pretty similar to what we had set up with Flask in terms of like WTF forms, right?
Okay.
But let's again looking at that, I just want to make sure like look at everything on that list there in terms of the best place to start from. So just a moment here as well. I want to double check some of these custom hooks here. Okay, just a moment here.
No worries.
And copy from copy to clip. Okay, I'm just looking at this one example here that we could use. Okay. Okay. So we can take that approach for the custom hook there. Let me actually just get this list here really quickly. And I'm going to send it in the chat and we can maybe just get like a little document going so we can keep track of
Okay.
of where we're at. So these are like the I'm sure you have this on your end, but I'm just going to send this in the chat because it might be helpful to like to create a list of these and then for us to go ahead and like indicate, which one we've gotten done so far, which one we haven't gotten done.
Yeah.
So let's I'm going to request screen control here and let's go back into final project. And back here, let's create a file at the level of final project here. So I can actually do that from my other terminal shell over here. Let's just say touch, and that's going to create a file for us. I'm going to say touch, and we'll say guidelines.txt. And we
Okay.
should see that right at the bottom here. But if I minimize it, then we'll probably see it a little bit better. And let's refresh this. And where's our txt? Oh, requirements. Okay. So I do think though that I called this, okay, so we have requirements.txt inside of here. So let's just see here really quickly. It doesn't let me see the contents of that directory. I did just create that file though, so it should have, oh, okay, so touch in this case is not recognized as a command. So I'm going to go ahead here then, and I'm going to call this one guidelines.txt. And I'm going to move it out to the root level of our project here.
Okay. I may have to hit move.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see that.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
All right. So now inside of here, let's go ahead and just copy paste those guidelines.
All right, let me go get that. Bring the chat up. Uh,
All right.
all right. Mm,
So we've got a few different components here for the 4 to 5 components. Right now, we currently have, let's see in here, and we've got add book form. We've got book item, which, obviously we've got to kind of take a look back at. We're also going to have book lists. We're also going to have edit book form. And we're also going to have home. So this other part here, right, this idea of, let's see if I can toggle that closed. Custom hook, which should demonstrate understanding of use effect and use state hooks. This one still to be done. We're already making use of use effect and use state hooks, but we haven't yet built out the custom hook.
okay.
This is done. And I'll actually put for this section here, I'll also say done. This little section here, let's grab these. Bring them over. So again, we've got all these different pieces here. This is done. For fetch data from API, again, right, we have the ability to go ahead and pull. Just stay here, book. All right, it looks like that's our next line down here. So go ahead and put here done. Right, and that is our books CRUD there. This is to be done. This is also to be done. This other one here is done. And this is also to be done here. Okay. All right, so now looks like 1, 2, 3 items, right, left for us to address here.
Okay.
So in this case, we could go ahead and move on to the login, logout functionality via Firebase. That actually might take, I'm trying to like identify maybe lower lift changes we can make here to begin with. So
Okay.
React hook form seems to be a pretty easy lift to me.
Okay.
To
All right, let's start
that.
working on that.
All right, so let's take a look at they should have some documentation here for us. So let me go ahead and try to look here. Or let's just actually go and get started. That should take us. Okay, so our first command here, right, they're showing us that command to install to front end here. So let's go over here and let's paste this command in here. Let's install this package. And let's look at this usage of it. So like looking over here, right, I can basically see that everything we're looking at here is really just, I mean, they say it's just the app, right, component. But a lot of this logic here, we could just bring out to our forms, to our form components. And there's really like, I guess there's going to be additional, right, forms that we're going to have for like login and sign up and all that. But these are our current forms. And I'm going to minimize this. Let's see what other pieces we want to go ahead and bring in here. So that is use form and submit handler from React hook form. So let's go ahead and bring these in, these 2 imports. And we're also going to say submit handler. And these are going to be imported from React hook. form. So, all right, so we got all these pressed now, or we got these imports set up here now. What they have here are a number of different kind of like configurations we can think of them as. So
Okay.
basically in this case, I can see that they have use form, inputs as well. Now inputs itself is already defined up here, I can see. So it looks like the inputs are defined in this fashion. And we go ahead and we pass those imports to use form in order for us to go ahead and actually like utilize, right, this form here. So let's go ahead here. Let's put in some inputs. And I can see the inputs are outside of the component declaration there. So I'm going to go ahead and put it right up here. It's a type inputs. And in this case, let's see what else we want to bring into here. I want to just verify here. It's declared but never used, more of a warning. All right. So they have in this case example and example required as strings, right? So we can see that each one of those inputs is given a name and also like a data type, right? Like whether it's a string or an integer or something like that. So our inputs for this, I can see we have ISBN, title, author, length, and is hardcover setter. So the inputs over here are going to be, let's say, ISBN, and in this case, let's say string. Let's
Oh, you
also,
left out an N.
yep, thanks.
Oh.
Yep, I was jumping out there. So we got ISBN string. We've also got title, which is a string. We've also got author, which is a string. We've also got a length, which is a string. Or actually, let me just verify here with that form itself. Let's go ahead and add. So again, ISBN looks like, okay, so ISBN is actually an integer. In this case, title is a string, author is a string, length appears to also be an integer. And then hardcover is a Boolean. All right. So we've got all our inputs set up here, all the different types of inputs. Now let's go ahead and see as well. I can see const register, handle submit, watch, form state, errors as well. Use form, we go ahead and invoke the actual hook right here. Now let's take all of this information here and let's copy this. And let's go ahead and drop this below our, just directly below our first line of our component function here. All right. Now, submit handler we have imported over here. I can see here that this, it does actually have to be, let's see their JavaScript version, because I noticed that they have TypeScript and they also have JavaScript. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to go ahead and remove this import. And let's go ahead here. I see why they had this with type, because we have two different types. We have like TypeScript and we also have JavaScript. With, yeah, with, I didn't see that there before, but with TypeScript, we're pretty explicit about declaring like data types, right? For whatever it might be. So let's remove this one here. Now let's go ahead and just check again over here. We've got all these different values equal to use form, const register, handle submit, watch, all of these different values. On submit data console.log data, console.log watch example. So we watch input value by passing the name of it. So let's go ahead and grab this here. And again, let's put this just directly below the first line of our component here. And let's move these down a little bit more. Now we've got like a conflict here because I've already got an onSubmit function here handling, right, all of this. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just comment out pretty much all of this because I want to test it out first, right, before we go ahead and do things like, sending up like post requests and all that. Can we right here, can you go ahead and just do a multi-line comment for me? This should be a control forward
Mhm.
slash. All right, awesome. Okay, so again, we've got all these different values: register, handle, submit, and watch. Now, let's see down here. So when we go down to the JSX, let's take a look down here. With our form, we still have on submit and then on submit firing off, but I can see in the difference here, they're actually using handle submit along with on submit here. So let's see what else. Input default value is equal to test. I can see that we can set default values there. And then here they're utilizing register along with an example. So let's take a look at this input and just see how it looks along with all of our other inputs. All right, so I'm gonna keep this one separate as well for now. Now let's go back over here. Let's go ahead and refresh. Okay. So this is one of our inputs, right? That's being drawn up from, as we can see here, React Forms. In this case, let's see, we have a default value of test, but we should be able to go ahead and say in the same way, let's say value is equal to ISBN. So automatically, right, that went ahead and disappeared. If I go ahead here and update the initial value here to like test, then we should see it fill in there. All right. So again, this first input, we can see value of ISBN and then register example. I want to just see that syntax a little bit more closely here. Let's see some other examples here as well. Okay. In this case, on submit data, I see they have const register and handle submit from use form. So these are just different pieces that we're like accessing using, again, this sort of variable assignment that we saw before, right? The idea
Okay.
of like over here, for example, like when we set states and all that, remember how, if we go to the very top here, it should be right over here, this sort of syntax, right? We're assigning two variables.
Mm-hmm.
And we want those to be equal to the array that's returned, right, by this invocation here. So basically, when we invoke this function here, it returns an array of two items. And using this sort of assignment here, we basically go ahead and say, something like, okay, the first item in the array that's returned here, we're going to give it the name of ISBN. The second thing that's returned in this array here, we're going to go ahead and give it the name of ISBN setter. Does that make sense? That sort of syntax? Okay, because I could do examples, whatever it might be, but it is array destructuring assignment. Right, so in this case, let's try, instead of array destructuring, let's look at object destructuring assignment. Yes, this is what we're doing right now. So again, in this case, right, if we do destructuring assignment with arrays, it's pretty much the same idea as it is with objects. Right, they should have some examples here of objects we can see right here. So what we're saying here is we're going to go ahead and basically set the value of A equal to whatever it is, the corresponding key inside of this object. So in other words, A is going to be, in this case, 1, right? Automatically based on the structure of this object. So if I go back into here and I take a look at their documentation, let's see here. Really what they're doing here is, again, is object destructuring assignment, what we just saw before. So let's go ahead here and maybe break it down a little bit more because I see that they have a few different components they're bringing in here. Let's see what else. So we've got const register, handle submit. We've also got watch, and we've got form state of errors included here. But in this example, it's a little bit more simple for us. On submit, we're just going ahead and logging the console data. Handle submit on submit, input register first name. Okay. So in this case, for each one of these inputs, then let's change this to ISBN. So let's say here register, and instead of example, I want this to say ISBN. So let's take a look over here now again at this input, right? It looks the same, but if we do like an inspect element on this, then we should see. Let's go ahead and find just that first input, and let's take a look at some of those differences between that first input and our other inputs that we set up. So let's expand here. Let's go ahead and expand our form. All right. And so we've got each one of these inputs, right? And it does pretty much resemble, right, our other fields that we have here. So let's take a look right up here and see. Okay. See if I can hone in. Okay, there we go. So there's our input right there. And I can probably just give it the same sort of title. Let's go ahead and grab a paragraph element here and drop this up. Okay. Now I want to see what happens if I change this to example. What difference we see down here? It changes the name of that input to example, right? So let's change this now to ISBN. Right, so that we've got the correct name for that input. Let's go ahead and create another one for title. So I'm just going to copy pretty much all these other pieces that we have, and we're going to redo them. So we've got ISBN set in this case. And again, we should be able to assign these on change listeners as well, so that when we make change to these inputs, it'll still update state, right? Which is very important for us, right? Because we want, as we're updating these inputs over here, right, we want to be updating state. So if we look at this add book form component, as I go ahead and type in 1, 2, 3 here, we should see that state light up, which is good. And we also saw this input up here light up, right? Because remember, this other input that we're building out is also, its value is tied to the state. So I've confirmed here now that we can pretty much just go ahead and remove, let's add the type of number as well, just for good measure, so that it's pretty much resembles what we see here before, and we can get rid of this now. Let's change title. So again, the value, we're going to keep the same. Type in this case, I could go ahead and just indicate here that we have a type of text. And still on change, we want it to fire off, right, that setter. But the one bit of code that we've got here, we want to include right down here. And we want this to state title. Okay. So same thing down here. Let's go ahead and change the type of, or the type to text here. Let's go ahead and grab register. We'll do this for author. And let's change these as well. We have type number for length, which is right. Let's do register, and let's state, in this case, length. And finally, let's go ahead over here and add register along with all this. So let's state here register, and we're going to say hardcover. So let's see over here again, hardcover. I'm just going to keep all as one word. All right, and let's go ahead and select this, and it still changes our state, which is good. Right, our length, if I type in here, that still updates that state down there. Author still updates the correct state. Title still updates the correct state, and ISBN updates the correct state. Cool. So let's just check one more time the button at the bottom. I want to make sure that, okay, input type of submit, which is what they have here. All right. And our, in this case, our on submit behavior is really quite simple. It's just a console log, right, of the data itself. Let's confirm. Let's go back over here, take a look over at console. And let's do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, and hardcover. And let's submit. Okay. And so this is the data, right, that we're logging to the console over here.
Mhm.
So let's go ahead now. Let's remove this on submit here. And let's bring back in our previous on submit. So we're going to go ahead here and do a multi-line comment for all these lines of code. All right. So let's go ahead and uncomment. All right. And let's see over here. So on submit, looks like, let's just go ahead and refresh here. All right. Cool. So again, let's go ahead now and do the same thing we did before, just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Let's go ahead and submit this one. And let's double check over here, e.prevent default. So in this case, it looks like we don't have to prevent that default behavior, right? That default page refresh from occurring anymore. Looks like this is something that React Forms is providing for us by default.
Okay. All right. Nice.
Yep. Yeah. So that definitely streamlines things for us a bit. I want to see if that book actually did go through though. Okay, so we would have seen it at the end there. Let's go ahead and add a book here. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and, oh, I'm sorry if I hit the command button there.
No worries.
Let's do 1, 2, 3. And let's copy this one out to all of our other inputs here. Okay. All right. So we got redirected back here, and there's our newest book that's appearing. So we have configured React Forms now for this particular form.
All right.
Yep, looks good to me now. There's a lot of similarities, right, between add book and edit book. So I'm going to go edit book. And, yep, and I'm pretty much going to go ahead and just replace all our inputs down here, or our entire form element, with that form element from before. Let's go ahead and bring over our inputs or our imports. I'm going to go ahead and import here, use form from, I believe it was React hook form. And again, over here, right at the top of edit book form, let's go ahead and bring over what we had over in add book form. So let's go ahead and grab all this information. And I'm going to get rid of this one. Now, the only thing that that I'm a little bit curious about is how it's going to, handle errors and validations and so on. So we're going to get back to that in a moment here.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just going to test out the validations as well. But let's go over to edit book form. Let's go ahead and paste this in. And it doesn't look like we're making use of watch, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. Same thing over with, let's remove a few of these files. So we can get back to add book form. This routes. We'll come back to this. Okay, now we can keep these right next to each other. All right. So back in add book form, over here, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the watch. All right. And so edit book form over here again, let's go ahead and click on edit for one of these. We're taking over to our form. Everything is loaded up, right off the bat, as far as what we had last time. So that's good. And let's go ahead now and test this out. Let's change this to all fours. Oops. So we'll do a bunch of fours here and let's go ahead and submit. Oh, same sort of idea over in edit book form. We no longer need to prevent that default page refresh behavior. Get rid of that. Let's change these all to fours. Submit. All right, let's see here. Undefined ID. It looks like this is, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and type in ID here. Okay, so there's really only the only other place, let me see, we've got this first one here where we're trying to access a property of ID. There's also, let's see, right up at the top. Oh, book underscore ID, I see. Okay, so it's got to be right here or just a little further down right here when we try to like access, right, the book from what's passed here. And again, this is happening on submit, right? So if we're trying to go ahead and we're trying to log, again, book 0.id to go ahead and send this information, then we've got to determine here whether or not we're actually getting a book. So let's see. In this case, I see that we have a book as our state. And we go ahead and we go ahead and pull all this information, right? We set the book. We go ahead and set the ISBN to the book's ISBN, title, author, length, hardcover. But again, the issue here is that we're trying to go ahead, when we try to go ahead and issue this fetch request, for some reason, book 0 here is not coming through for us. So let's see if I can, let's try one more time here. Submit. And let's refresh. So again, the way that we're getting book in this case again is book underscore ID is being passed via params here. We're going ahead and firing off this use effect hook, which is going to load up all of our state with the ID of that particular book, which is how we're getting ISBN, title, author, length, all that to load up for us in our inputs. But book in this case, let's try to go ahead and change it from, instead of book 0, let's change it to book.id. Let's go ahead and submit. Okay, so in this case, it was failing to fetch before. But book, when we go ahead and set it to that state there, it should go ahead. Let's actually see here. Let's look at components. And let's look down at edit book form. And there's our state of our book, but it's actually an object. So the object that's being set here, it looks like, is just going to be ID inside of that individual book. So let's say here, again, book.id, because that's going to give us, that's actually going to go ahead and give us, right, the actual value of that ID. Let's go ahead and do console.log book.id. Let's refresh. Okay, there's our 1 coming through there. And we're interpolating it into that string there. So it should go ahead and make that change for us. Let's go ahead and just change one of these. Okay.
All right.
There we go. There's our latest change reflected. Yeah. So just want to try that one more time because it was a little peculiar how it gave us that error. Okay. All right. So now we've got all this set up, right? We've got in this case, again, React hook form set up for, let's see here, we've got this set up for, again, add book form. And also we've got it set up for edit book form. Now, the only other ones that we've got to do here are like log in and sign up, right?
Yeah.
So we'll say here then that these are to be done, but we're going to be using React hook form with that.
Okay.
So again, I'm going to say this is done, this is done, and this is to be done. All right, so we've got these other components in here now. Login and sign up, we're going to create those components once we go ahead and actually set up, right, all of this sort of authentication here. Let me quickly check here with, again, in this case, setting up Firebase, right, making sure that we've gone ahead and pushed all those records to Firebase. Because,
Okay.
I mean, the records, I mean, the records and any changes to the records are going to be pushed to the database, but when we log in here, those requests should be sent up to Firebase. So I'm going to start by creating one component here, and I'm going to call this one just login. Or I'll just say login here. And login, I'm also going to give it the extension. Should allow me if I click here to change.
Need me to do it?
Yeah, if you could please, let's do a control click there. And let's rename login.js.
All right.
All right. So for login.js, I'm going to take over some pieces from here because it's going to follow the same sort of flow, right? Like we know that we're going to have, in this case, React hook form. So let me go ahead and, oops, okay. There we go. Let's grab this and let's just bring this over to login and we're going to modify it. So this is our login component over here. We know that we still want link, let's say use state. We may not want link. Use form we want to use. Let's go ahead and change this one to login. And actually, I'm going to call this login form. Can we go ahead and let's rename
Okay.
this? Yeah.
Login.
Yeah, I can type it. Let's change the I to a lowercase I as well, just because it's going to log in on one word there.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Cool. So we've got login form over here. We don't necessarily need any of these items to be passed here, so we can get rid of these. We know that we're going to have a number of different inputs here, right? So really, we're just going to have like username. We're going to have our username setter, and then we're going to have our password. All right. And we're going to state here as well, use state, but just with an empty string here. So when we go ahead and submit this, again, we're not going to be creating a new book object, so we don't need to really take any of this. We're going to be redirecting the user as well. So we're probably not going to need to go ahead and clear any of these inputs out. And in fact, for the edit form and also add book form, because we're going ahead and redirecting on those, add book form, and also let's also say edit book form. Since we're redirecting here, I'm seeing that there's not really any need for us to go ahead and clear out those inputs. So again, if I do an add book here, and I say 1, 2, 3, 4, let's grab that and let's paste it here, 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 and here. Again, there's no real need for us to go ahead and clear those out because we automatically just redirect.
Okay.
And if we don't redirect the user, then something went wrong, right? So let's, another thing I wanted to check here was add book. And if we try to submit here, okay, right. So validations, we're going to have to make sure that we get in place here as well. But But login form, let's go ahead and take a look over here. Username, password. On submit, we don't necessarily want to send this fetch request to this location anymore. It's not going to be to the local API that we have in place. It's going to be instead to Firebase. So let's hop into Firebase here now.
Do you want me to bring up
Oh,
the
yeah,
Google?
should be right. And all right. So let's get started over here now. And it looks like you already have an
Well,
account.
that's my work account. I can show you the Firebase with my regular Gmail account. Can I do that? Because
Sure.
I don't know how much longer I'm going to be keeping that email.
Okay.
So let me. All right. Just a second. Let me. Okay, here we go. All right. So, and I will set this to be here. Okay. So now that's my regular email.
All right. Cool. All right. Sounds good. So let's hop here to get started. And we're going to create a project. And for this project, we can go ahead and just call it final underscore project. Maybe keep it the exact same. We could also just use Campbell case here. So we'll accept the terms here. And we have to confirm both of these basically to go ahead and proceed.
Mhm.
So, all right, let's go ahead and enable Google Analytics. We can use that analytics location. Create project.
So this is just for default, make it the US.
Yeah, by because basically because Firebase is a platform,
Mhm.
we've got to carry out like a few different steps on that platform before we go ahead and make some changes in our code.
Okay. Nice.
All right, so as that's loading here, let's take a look at our other inputs here. Because this is external, we're not going to have these links displaying. This is going to be just our login. Same as our component name. Excuse me. And let's change these to username. Excuse me, I got hiccups. And we'll do.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. All right, we'll state password here. Let's get rid of our other inputs right here. All right, now both of these are going to be a type of text. All right, we also want username and password here. Because again, those individual inputs, we want to make sure their values are aligned with this, excuse me, with the states we created further up here.
Okay. If you need to go get some water again.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah, it's all right. I got, excuse me, I got a big bottle of water right here with me. So
Okay.
let's see here. So we got username. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and change this to password. And let's make sure that we're targeting the correct setters here. So we're going to say username setter, and we're also going to go ahead and say password setter. All right. And let's go ahead and change this button here to say login. All right. Now to make this viewable, right? Of course, we got to add another route for this.
Mhm.
So let's go ahead and add one more route here. Let's say path / login. The element here, let's go to login form and change this export here. So I'll say login form. Oh, all right. And looks like there's just a little syntax error at the top here. So let's get rid of this, excuse me, this curly brace here. All right, and let's import login form here so that we can reference it in our paths, excuse me, in our routing logic there. So I'm going to state here import login form, and it generated the rest of it for us there. Now let's go ahead and say path, and we're going to state here element, and we're going to have login form. All right. So let's continue here for a moment. And that should take us to like our project dashboard here. Let's go to localhost 3000. Again, just back to our root location here. And let's see here, login form, new book. So let me go ahead and see here. Ooh, all right. Let's see here. Right, so we still have all this different fetch logic here. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's do a
comment it.
Yeah, let's
comment. Yeah.
Yep, let's do a multi-line comment here. All right. So now if I go to login, there's our username and password, there's our login form.
Mm-hmm.
But again, really? Let me see if I can. Maybe this is from another project here. Let's go over to app.js. Okay, let's see again. So we've got / right, as our root path here, but then we've got a path of / login. Let me double check here. Again, this is as far as React Router DOM. I just want to see their documentation in terms of like adding restricted routes. All right. And again, I want to see their, excuse me, their V6 documentation. So I'll actually hop in here. Let's go to React Router V6. And let's take a look inside here to see some of their documentation here. So we've got navigation. We've also got routes. But in this case, router, create browser router is what we're utilizing on line 36. So I'm going to focus on this one. All right, and here's some different examples here we can see. So again, the inclusion of path, right? The element as well, they have different things like loaders, children, and so on. But let's see how we can go ahead and set up our restricted routes here. Because I just want to make sure that we're following the requirements of this version.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'll actually take, because it's a little faster on my end here. Just take a look real quick.
Okay.
All right. Right, so in this case, in the case of just our root app component here, already right off the bat, I know we're going to need a user state. Set user. Because we've got to keep track of like whatever users are currently logged in, right, or are initially logged in. And we can go ahead here and we can also give just a null value for this one, because we can assume that, right off the bat, when the application loads up, that nobody is currently logged in here. Now, if we add a button in here, what I'm thinking is, once we actually get to this location in the application, like once we get past the login and then we go over here, right, and we like access, right, the application itself, then the idea is that that user state should be set to the current user, right, whoever's currently logged in. We also want, in this case, something to handle log out. So I could create a little separate component to do this, but logout is really just going to be like a button. So let's go over here. We've also got router provider. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and put that component over in, let's see, maybe just manage books for now, or just book list. So let's go ahead and test it out over here. I'm going to say something like, let's create another component here. I'm going to say const, and I'm going to say here, I'm going to state handle logout. And this is going to be a behavior, right? Handle logout, all that it's really going to do is set that user back to null. So actually, if I move this function a little bit higher, I can move it up to app.js because the state is being managed here, right? That user state. And then I should be able to just pass it down to that, to any one of my components. So let's say something like this. Const handle, I can actually just paste it here. And handle logout really should just be responsible for setting our user state back to 0. So again, in this case, we have our setter function. Handle logout. When we fire this off, what really should take place is, I can put it right down here. Let's say set user back to null. Right. And so in this case now, I can pass this handle logout behavior to any one of my components. And I can go ahead and make sure that the user, when a user clicks on this button that fires off this behavior, the user is set back to null. Right. So this is just the logout functionality here. But let's say handle logout. And let's do handle logout. And I could really pass this to, the idea here is that, I should really have like a navigation bar, right, that contains this button. But let's test it out here just in our home component. So again, over in home, let's destructure the props there, what we're passing. Let's say handle logout. And then we could put just a little button here that says logout. And when we click on that button, we want to fire off that handle logout function. Right, and that's gonna change our user state back to null, which is gonna log us out.
Okay.
But the thing is, though, that we've got to have conditional rendering, right, for our components based upon whether or not states are true or false. Right, so let me just double check here again. Create browser router. What we can pass to this. I can see the loader. We have root loader as well. Let's take a look. We have type declaration. We also have base name. Just one second. I'm going to take a look on my end here. Let's see. Okay, so let's see here. All right. So I am seeing a different syntax for setting up our routes. It doesn't, let me make sure that it corresponds to what we're doing here with V6. Okay, I see. All right, cool. So what we can say in this case then, right, is something like, let's say here, in terms of the element that we want to render, right? If there is a user, right? If user is true, then we want to display this component. If not, then we want to re-navigate them back to login, right? And we want that same rule to apply for all of our protected routes here. So what I can use here is a ternary operator. And so I also want to see here, let's just bring this one up. And let's see our imports from React Router DOM. Let's just try navigate in this case. And so again, over here, if I take a look at this path here and I take a look at the element that's actually being rendered, the first thing we could say is something like this. We can say, okay, is there a user? If there is a user, then we want to see the home here. If not, then we want to navigate the user to, in this case, /login. And let's go ahead and close out this other. And I've got to make sure to keep this closing piece over here as well, because we got to have basically just two components listed here, right? So in other words, if there is a user, right, then we want to see that home component rendered. Otherwise, we want to navigate them to login. So let's try to access here just our main root here, and we're automatically redirected to login, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can apply the same thing to my other pieces here. I can say something like user. If there is a user, then we want this component to render. If not, then we want to navigate the user, right, back to login. So again, now if I try to access any of those other points there, right, even if I just try to go to the root page here, it's automatically going to say, hey, user is null, nobody's logged in yet. So we just want to continue navigating them back. Let's say here as well, user. Same sort of idea here. Let's go ahead and say book list if. If not, then we can go ahead and just bring in this whole piece right here. All right, and last piece here, edit book form. Again, that's something that only logged in users should see. And then we'll go ahead and paste and navigate here. So really, the only piece that's accessible without user having some sort of a value is going to be login. All right. So we've got our handle logout behavior. Let's go ahead and test this out by giving some value, right? Anything other than null to this one here. So let's say that I just put, an empty string, right? That's going to be a true value. So what we should see over here, if I save this out and if I go over to, let's say manage, I think it was, let's see. Actually, our routes are right over here. So let's see manage books. And let's go ahead and make sure that the state itself has a truthy value. If it's not treating it as a truthy value there, it's because that string isn't recognized as a truthy value here. Let's try this one more time. Let's go over to just try to reach our root page here. Still taking us back to login. Let's go ahead and see the state here. Just want to verify that the state we're seeing here, or the state update that we made, is still persisting over here. So let's see more tools, developer tools. And let's take a look over, we should see, yep, there's our components. And now login form. Actually, in this case, the state is stored at the level of app, so that's where we'll see it. Okay, so it's still setting, okay, it has the empty user as an empty string here, but let's go ahead and provide like an actual value here. Let's say test. And let's go over to manage books. Okay, there we go. So we had to give that string like an actual value, but an object will suffice as well.
Okay.
Because ultimately what we're going to load up this user state with, once I change this back to null, we should see it snap back to login. Again, the idea is like we go into this login form, we've already got all of our different inputs handled. When we submit this login form, let's go over to login form and see. Again, there's nothing really happening when we go ahead and fire off, right, this request here. But ultimately, what we want to do is we want to take the information, username and password, we want to send that up to Firebase. We want Firebase to verify that information. If it is actually verifiable, then we want to go ahead and update that user state, right, to have an actual value for us here. So already, I know that this handle, if I go back to app.js, and I take a look at this function of handle, in this case, not handle logout, but I know that when I click on login form, I know that I'm going to have to pass down some sort of a function that's going to update our user state, right? So let's say user setter, and then let's say user setter, because again, like once the user goes ahead, should be user setter. Let's go ahead back up to the top here and see. Set user. Okay, let's go ahead and change this to. I want to actually just double check here. React use state. I want to see their documentation just to see their state setter function conventions that they follow here. Okay, so they begin with the verb. Okay, so in this case, let's go ahead and keep it. Let's change this one to set books. And I'm going to go ahead and update book setter. Let's go ahead and replace all of these instances here with, as we see here, set book, singular. Let's go ahead and hit enter. And this should be find and replace all. All right. So now it is set book, which is the same over here. And we've got set user as well. Now set user is going to be passed down to our login form here. So let's go ahead and set here. Set user is equal to set user. So now in login form, let's update these ones here. Let's say set. We're going to do camel case. So first letter, not capitalized. We're also going to say set password here. And I'm going to update down here as well. Set username and set password. And set password. Okay. So again, the idea is like with set user being passed down here, set user should be responsible for updating that state, right? After we've got a successful confirmation from Firebase, right? That these credentials match up. Set user is gonna fire off. It's gonna update that state, and that's gonna thereby grant us access, right? It's gonna make a state change to the user state, which is gonna refresh the components, and we're just gonna go ahead and log in that way with just a simple state change there. I know we've still got to handle validations. We can get back to that one as well, but let's take a look here at Firebase. So let's go ahead here. Authentication is really what we want because we're going to be managing users, right, for this application. Let's get started. All right. So our first sign-in method here, we could just do simple, right? Simple email password.
Okay.
We're going to have to update that from username to email, but that'll be okay. Let's do email password. Let's save this. Email password is enabled here. So let's go ahead and change these preemptively here. I'm going to go ahead and say email, set email, and password, set password. So we're going to have over here, email. We're also going to have here, the value is going to be set initially to our state of email. Let's change this here to email. And then we're going to go ahead here and we're going to say set email. So again, same kind of principle here. Like we want to package up all the form values, right? Everything that was submitted in the form. Once we make changes to these inputs, right? Whenever we make changes, the state's going to continue updating. When we're all done at the moment of submission, we're going to take all of those states, right? Or just those two, email and password, and we're going to send them up to Firebase to handle the authentication for us. So let's go ahead over here. Let's create a few users at the level of this database, right? So I'm going to say test user at gmail.com and then password, just going to say password. So let's just make it very simple. Test at test.com and then password. So we're going to add this user now. So this user is now registered, right? Registered inside of our application here. So the idea here is that I should be able to type in test at test.com and then the password, log in, it should verify before going ahead and taking this through. Let's see here as well. Just one moment here. All right. So a few different steps here. I'm going to go ahead over to our terminal. Let's see that real quick. And let's go ahead here. We're going to be on front end. We're going to go ahead and run npm install Firebase. So it's going to be a package we're going to install here that's going to enable us to work with Firebase here. And so we're going to put all of this information as well into a configuration file.
Okay.
So I'm going to go over to here now. We can put that configuration file probably just at the level, at the root level of our front end project here. It should be fine for us. But let me just double check whether or not. Okay, yeah, we can create that just at the level here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on front end. Let's create a new file here. Let's call this, again, just firebase.js. And again, this is going to contain all of our configurations here. We're still waiting on the package to download them. So inside of our configuration file here, I'm going to go ahead and import a few different pieces here. So first of all, we're going to import just Firebase from, and let's put in strings over here, Firebase app. So we've got that first piece. We also want to go ahead and import the pieces we need to handle authentication. So I'm going to say Firebase and then auth. So we're going to have one const here of Firebase config. And because this file is going to contain some sensitive information, I'm not sure if we have any sort of Git tracking going on. Okay, we do. We don't currently have a Git. Okay, we do have a Git ignore file. Let's go ahead and add here. Let's see, production miscellaneous. I'm going to go ahead and add it right up to here. And what this is going to do, like if I just did a git status and we can see that that file is being tracked. But remember that when we track these files and we add them to version control and we push them up, that means other people can see our information.
Yeah.
Right. So in this case, I'm going to just distinctly say, I'm going to say, okay, we want to, first of all, ignore that Firebase .js file. So let's try again one more time here. Let me get rid of the dot. And there we go. Now we see it's no longer included here, right, in untracked files. We saw it here. But now that I've added it to git ignore, I've effectively told Git, hey, we want to ignore this file because it's going to contain sensitive information. Like the first piece here, which is going to be our API key. So the API key we should be able to find inside of our settings over here. Let's go ahead over to here. There's our web API key. So again, this is, I've omitted this file from version control because what someone theoretically could do is take that API key and run a lot of traffic right through your account.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's the risk, right? Is that someone could just take it, run a lot of traffic through your account, and then you might get a large bill from Google. Yeah, because they typically bill by traffic, right? By like how many people are actually utilizing your service.
Gotcha.
Okay, so all right, so let's see here now. A few different pieces we're going to need. We're going to need also, I'm just going to write these down. Auth domain. Let's go ahead and put, I'll just put test here for now because we're going to update this. We're also going to have project ID. Which I'm going to go ahead and put this test here for now as well. Let's go to our next piece here, which is going to be storage buckets. And I don't see that listed there, so I'm going to go ahead and write it in here. And let's go ahead and add a few different pieces here. We might not use all of these, but we'll fill them out and then kind of look at them one by one and see what we can omit here. And then we've got app ID, which I'm just going to keep as test for now. All right. So let's go ahead now and take a look at auth domain. So we've got a few different pieces here. We've got our project ID. Let's go ahead and copy that one over. Let's go ahead here as well. Not sure why I pasted like that, but what I can always do here is kind of a neat little trick is I can copy, then I can paste it into the URL address bar, and that removes any formatting automatically that was there. So if I paste this in, it's just going to be right in there.
Right.
All right. So project ID also got, let's see, app ID. We've got project name included here. Let's see what other information I can get from here. Environment type is unspecified. So I can probably omit a few different pieces here. Let me just double check here real quick. So one of these pieces here, actually already I can see we can get rid of storage bucket. Because we're not really storing any information, we're just checking against users we have in our database, right? And all the actual storage of data, like for creating new books, that's handled inside of our database. Okay, we can also get out messaging sender ID. Okay. So we've got project ID over here. Let me see other pieces that we can integrate here. So again, auth domain, I want to try to find for us. It's a domain of our web application where you're implementing Firebase. So just one moment. Okay. So for auth domain, I'm just going to say localhost since we're running this really just locally for now. And let's see, app ID. Okay. So we are looking at our project settings here. We're looking at general, just a moment. Okay, and then your apps. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look over here. So let's see over here. We've got a few different options here. Let's go ahead and stick with this one here. Let's give our name here. We can give this to just final project. We don't want to use Firebase for hosting, so I'm going to go ahead and omit that.
Okay.
All right, so we've already gone through a few of these different steps here, but we are able to get some of this information all from here, right? So actually the auth domain I can see right here. We've got project ID as well, storage bucket, all these different options. So I could probably go ahead and just copy this whole piece and add it. We don't have to use all of these different components, but if we choose to at some point, we'll have all that information there. And again, this is very sensitive. All right. So again, we've got a few different pieces. We've got our configuration here. Now let's go ahead and initialize Firebase. So let's bring this back. And let's say, again, in this case, we're going to say firebase.initialize app. And inside of that, we're going to drop all of our configuration, all of our configurations that we set above. All right. So there's just one thing we're going to be exporting here, which in our case here is going to be right this here. Auth is equal to Firebase dot auth. All right. So this whole configuration file we've set up over here. Now the configuration file itself, we've got to go ahead and import right into the component where it's being used. So the component where it's actually being used is going to be right over here and our login form component. Now, if I want to import this, let's go ahead and state here imports auth, right? What it is that I'm exporting from that configuration file. Let's say import auth from my current location is component. So I'm going to go up one level, which is going to take us over to actually to SRC. Let's do one level higher, and that should take us up to the highest level here, front end. And then we can state Firebase .js. But let's actually verify here again, login form current. I go one level higher. That's going to take me to SRC. I go one level higher. That's going to take me to front end. And that should take me over to Firebase here. Let me just get rid of that dot. And typically it suggests it, right, to show that we've like tracked the correct path here. So auth is imported at this point. We've already got email. We've also got password as our two states here. We've got use navigate to basically to automatically re-navigate the user if we need to. Let's go ahead here for handle login. Again, handle login is defined up here in app.js. So actually handle login, since it's being passed here, let's see. Ideally, we want handle login actually to be set at a higher level. So I'm going to go up to app.js. I'm going to go ahead and import what we need here. Let's drop this maybe to the bottom. We're in a different location now. So now I'm just going to go pretty much one level higher, and that should take us to Firebase. And let's see if I type it in, we can see it's there. All right. All right, so we've got this auth piece imported from our configuration file. Now we've already got down here, let's move this. We've already got handle logout, but I'm going to go ahead here and state const handle login. And handle login is where we're going to actually use that auth there. So I'm going to put one keyword here, which is going to be async. And so basically I'm using this keyword to say, okay, this is an asynchronous function, meaning that when it fires off, it's going to allow the rest of our application code to continue until we get a successful response, right, from Firebase in this case. So we're going to use a little bit of syntax here. We're basically going to say, okay, we want to try something, right? In this case, this is very similar. Like if we broke this apart, actually, this would be very similar to the sort of fetch logic that we have, just kind of a different syntax, right? We can write our fetch requests using try and await as well. In fact, I think MDN has documentation here. If we take a look at the fetch API, let's find. Let me try await. Try. Okay, so I guess they don't have it listed here, but that's okay. Again, similar syntax to what we are doing already with fetch. There we go.
Okay.
Right, this sort of idea here. But again, the reason why we're using try in this case is because like if there is an error that arises, then we want to catch it. So basically,
just one thing. There's a feedback hub that's on that
okay.
it's blocking. So let me just exit out of that. Okay.
Okay.
Everything's good now.
Cool. All right. So again here we're gonna try something, right? We're gonna try and we're gonna go ahead and fire off a request to Firebase with the email and the password. If there is an error, then we're gonna want to go ahead and catch that error before going ahead and logging that error to the console. So again, if there is an error, we want to catch it. We're going to go ahead and state console.log. Or actually, in this case, with console, we can do console.error. And that will be a little bit clearer for us in the console if there was a problem, right? A console.error is going to light up in red for us. If I do console.log, that's just going to display normally for us in the browser console over here. Right, but if I do, in this case, let's finish up our code here and I'll do an example of the console.error.
Okay.
But again, in this case, we could say error signing in. Error signing in, and then we'll go ahead and just interpolate that error into console.error there. Now, with await here, we want to take that auth object that we went ahead and imported from our configuration file. And there's a particular method here. It should actually, okay, it doesn't pop up for us, but that's okay. Sign in with email and password. Let me change this to capital I. And so again, this is just a piece that we're bringing in from Firebase, right? Sign in with email and password.
Okay.
Such that, you know, the beauty of working with Firebase in this fashion is basically like, you know, there's all these pre-built pieces. All we need to do is pass the email and password to, right, to this particular location here, or excuse me, to this function. That's a built-in function. Like we could always see documentation on it. Sign in with email and password. It should just show up directly for us in Firebase here. Right, so this is just a pre-built method that we can use here. So, all right. In the case where a user logs in successfully, this is where it's going to happen, right? If a user does log in successfully, then there are a few behaviors that we're going to want to include here, right? So first of all, what we want to do is we want to set that user to some sort of a value, right? But let's try something like this. Let's just do a console.log of sign in successful. Right, so nothing's really going to happen yet. We're not going to change the state or anything like that. But when we go ahead and submit this form, excuse me, then we should go ahead and verify here, right, with that console.log to see whether or not we're able to log in. So let's go back over to here now and let's refresh. Let's double check our imports here. So let's see here. Again, my import for auth. App.js is located inside of SRC, so I'm going to have to actually go one level higher. Because if I collapse SRC, let's collapse components. App.js itself is located inside of SRC, so if I go one level higher, that should take us over to the firebase.js file there. So let me go ahead and put an extension. Okay, so they're stating here relative imports outside of SRC are not accepted. So what I'm going to go ahead and do then is I'm going to move this Firebase configuration file into SRC. And let's go ahead and update those imports. We can see here that it updated to reflect Firebase being in our current location here. Let's go over to firebase.js. Let's refresh here just to make sure it's not a lingering error that we're looking at here. Okay. So let's go over to Firebase here. We've got export. We've got, I'm going to go ahead here and put a default. Okay. So let's see here. I just want to verify my syntax here. Again, we've got this export of a const of auth, which is equal to firebase.auth here. Now, let me just check my syntax here again. From Firebase app, we've already imported that. We've imported Firebase auth as well. We've got firebase.initialize app, Firebase config, and now we're exporting this constant of auth, firebase.auth here. Let me see if I can get maybe a little bit better error reporting in the terminal. Okay, so let's see. Export default imported as Firebase was not found in Firebase app. So could be a little bit out of date here. Let me just double check their code here, but let's see. I see Firebase error on log get apps. Just a moment here. Let's see here. Let me go ahead and just Control C on this. And let's do one more time, npm start. Okay, let's give this a little bit of time. Okay, so it looks like try to open up in a separate tab there. It's okay. Okay, so let's see here. Email is not defined, password is not defined. Let's see app.js. Right. Okay. So the issue here with handle login as well is that we want these values, right, to be sent when we go ahead and send and submit that form. So email and password should be passed into this handle login function here. Let's go ahead now, pass this handle login to login. And actually set user is going to be used up here in handle login. So I'm no longer going to pass set user to login form, just going to pass handle login. And let's go over to login form. And let's destructure here handle login. All right. So I want to see though this piece here again. Now firebase.js is inside of our SRC directory here. Just a moment here. Let's check our public folder over here as well. Okay. So again, we've got it next to index.js and our other configuration files here. Just not sure why it's kind of grayed out here. It's a little bit strange that it's doing that, but let's see. Let's try this. Maybe it just doesn't like that syntax. So I'm going to go ahead and define this constant before going ahead and exporting it. So I'm going to go ahead and say export default auth. Now let's go to app.js. And let's go ahead up to here and state import auth from Firebase. So we have our export right over here, export default of auth, which is our const that's defined over here. So it shouldn't have any problems with going ahead and exporting here this particular auth here. Let's see if this individual file is what's giving us some issues here. Let's see if there's any, let's see here. Again, auth is what we are exporting here. So let's go to app.js and let's go ahead and state import auth from Firebase. Export default imported as Firebase was not found in Firebase app. So that actual export that we're trying to do here is not firing off properly for us here. Let me double check their latest documentation. There could have been some changes to that. Let me just see Firebase's documentation here. So again, what we're looking at here is this basic configuration file. So let's see. Okay, we've got all of our different. Okay, we've also got, all right. Slightly different syntax here. Let me state here, const. That down one. Const app is equal to Firebase initialize app. Let's go ahead and put const here. Let's go ahead here and now export. And let's export this const here of auth is equal to auth is equal to app.auth. Okay. So we've already got this const. Let me go ahead and change this to app auth. All right, and let's go ahead and see one more piece I can export here. Export default app. So let's see here as well. Now over in app.js, let's go ahead and import auth from Firebase here. Again, from ./Firebase. Let's check our configurations here as well. One more time. So. So let's see. Export default of app. Over in app.js, we've gone ahead and imported Firebase from Firebase to import that configuration. So again, let me see here. In this case, let me try importing Firebase from .Firebase. Okay. Now, in this case, again, we've got Firebase, which is imported here. So let's see. Again, we've got in our configuration file here, we've got export const of auth, which is equal to app.auth. We've got app itself set up there. Then we're exporting that default app. Now let's see here. We've got this export. Okay, so let's see over here as well. Right, one other bit of syntax here. So, okay. If we have an actual length already, then we're going to go ahead and fire off firebase.app. If not, we're going to go ahead and fire off Firebase initialize app. Now, let's see over here. I am seeing some, I noticed this as well with book item, just some very strange import export errors that we're encountering here that really shouldn't be occurring. Like we should be able to, without a problem, import, export different pieces from files. So it was something that it was like an error that I noticed when we were doing book item, like it's something I've never encountered before. The fact that it didn't allow us to go ahead and import that component into book list and then use that component to render a list of components. Let's see. So again, we've got Firebase, which is being imported over here. And we've already gone ahead and installed Firebase, which is now included right here. So if I go ahead here, I'm not sure if this has to do with like a versioning issue, if there's a new version, I'm looking at a different version here, but let's see. We've already got our app here. We've got export const of app is equal to app.auth. Now in app.js, auth was being used down here and handle login in order for us to go ahead and pass in that information. But what I can do for now, instead of having it in a separate configuration file, what I could do is just go ahead and make sure that it's all right there in app.js, and then we can move it out later. So I'm going to go ahead and paste all this in, not all that. Everything from our firebase.js file here. I'm going to do Control C. Now let's try one more time here. I'm not sure if that's allowing me to go ahead. Could
Need
you
me to do it?
yeah, could you
Yeah.
do? All right, let's go ahead and paste that into app.js.
The whole
Just because,
thing?
yeah, we're just going to copy here. Just some very, very strange import export errors that I'm seeing with this application here.
And then go to
Yeah, we'll go to app.js right here. And now we're going to go right at that line there. Let's go ahead and paste it. All right. So a few changes I got to make here. I've got some conflicting imports, which is all that red on the right side there. So let's go ahead and remove that first of all. Let's also get rid of the exports here because we can actually utilize these within. So I'm going to go ahead here and state, let's get rid of that. And all right. Now it's still, let's go ahead and see import Firebase from Firebase app. I can see that we're importing Firebase auth. We've got all these different pieces here as well. So it's probably just the syntax that I'm using here. I'm not sure if this is, let me see if I can actually find this online, because it could just be sometimes like the way you do things changes like overnight because they update everything. Let's see how recent this is. Where's our date? Right there. Okay. 2 years, one. Let's see. Okay, so that's what I thought it was. It's a newer newer sort of syntax that we're going to need to use here. So let's go ahead and I'm going to Control Z here and undo these imports. Let's go ahead and work with it just within that file. Now, firebase.js, let's go ahead and change that first line to what we see here. We'll actually replace these two lines. And let's go back over to here now. Okay, so that error is gone now, so which is good for us. So app.js, I'm going to go over to here now. And I'm going to import auth from Firebase. All right. And so auth is being utilized further below here in handle login to do sign in with email and password. So let's go ahead here. Let's try to log in here now. So again, developer tools, let's get a look here at the console. Let's try to log in without any credentials, first of all. Let's hit refresh here. Okay, let's see our flow here real quick. Again, handle login, email and password should be passed into that one. So since handle login is being passed to login, what I've got to do now over in login form is I've got to say, all right, when we do submit, we've got all these different behaviors here, right, from before. But really all that we want to do is handle login. And we're going to pass email and password to that function. We shouldn't need any of this other syntax that we had here before. We're just passing this information up to where handle login is declared inside of app.js. So let's refresh here and let's try to log in. Okay, Firebase error. The email address is badly formatted. So let's go ahead here. Let's try test@test.com. And let's try password. And let's go ahead and log in. Sign in successful. Right. So what I can do here as well is I can probably just change this input to a type of password so that it hides it. And then instead of it going ahead and just logging that message to the console, let's see if we can go ahead and do some other things here, right? We don't want that just console log of sign in successful. Let's go ahead and do a few other things. First of all, let's see if I can get some information here about the user. So, I mean, the current user who's signed in, you know, obviously, once we sign in with that user, we've got to set the user object to that user, right? But what we could do for now is just do set user and let's set it to an object here. Let's say something like, again, you know, email is test@test.com. And we're also going to have password, which is password. So let's see here again. Now we're still going to see that console log, but we're going to set our user to just this sample little object here. So let's go ahead and log in. Sign in is successful. We updated our state. Let's go ahead and double check our state here at the level of app. There's our user has been created here. So what we're going to want to do then is let's import the piece that we need. I believe we already have it imported here, navigate. Let's just say here, let's say navigate to. And I don't think we can actually put a component in here. So let me see if I can import one other piece. I think from login form, yeah, we had use navigate. So I'm going to import this one. Let's see. We're not using navigate here anymore, actually. But let's see this. Okay, so again, navigate, let's get rid of that. We're also going to get rid of pretty much all of these here. But let's go over to app.js now. Let's import over here. I can see that we've got navigate. Let's go ahead and do use navigate. Let's create that navigate object, which we had before. I believe that was inside the component. So what I'm going to do here, we've got our states. I'm also going to go ahead here and say navigate is equal to use navigate. And when we get a successful response here, let's set this as a const. Again, when we get a successful response here, we want to set that user. And then let's go ahead and navigate to just the main page. All right. Right. So it only can be used within the context of a router component. But the problem is that all of our routes are actually set down here. So we are outside of the context of our router. So let's think of another piece that I could use here. I know that we're using navigate here in terms of the element that we want to render. But again, we do want to redirect that user. So let's see if I can go ahead. I should be able to actually move this. If we can't use this outside the constraints of our router component, then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move this logic over to our login form component. And handle login now. Let's go ahead and remove this from our props. And over here on line 67, handle login is what's being passed over here, but there is no more handle login. Now we've moved it to login form. What we're going to be passing instead is auth, because we need to use that inside the handle login function, and also set user, because we're going to use that within the function as well. So login form, let's go over here and destructure these. Let's say auth. And let's also say set user. Now this actual callback function, I'm going to move this inside of my component. Okay. And now let's move over our import of navigate. So I'm going to remove it from here. We're also going to remove that instance I tried to create of use navigate further down here. And I'm going to move this over to our login form. So let's go over here. We've got our states. I'm going to go ahead now and create our navigate object. We still want to go ahead and import. In this case, it's going to be use navigate from React Router DOM. We should be within the context of a router component here, because login form itself is included inside of our routing logic over here. It is included here as a path here. So let's try to refresh here just for a moment. Okay, that was it. I couldn't see the error there. All right, so yeah, that sometimes it's a little not the best with error reporting.
Yeah.
Let's go over here then. And again, let's try to log in with credentials that we know aren't going to work. Right, we can see in this case, email address is badly formatted, right, or invalid email, really. But let's do test@test.com, and let's do password. Let's go ahead and log in, and there we go. Right, now our state itself is set in app.js, right, to this little test user that I've got. And when I click on log out, it's going to change our state and take us right back here. Right,
Okay.
so to log in, log out with correct credentials. If I add something here and I try to log in, we're going to see that error appearing in the console. But if I've got the correct credentials here, I go ahead and hit login. We're redirected just to our root home component here.
All right.
Again, like one thing I want to make a note of here is users should probably be set. Let's say here, users should be set to returned user from Firebase. Right, so for now, we're just creating it, setting it to this little object here just to test out the functionality.
Mhm.
But if we look at the guidelines here, let's see again one more time here. Login, logout functionality via Firebase. I would say this is done, right? But there's still a few different things to keep in mind here, right? We want to do UI friendly error handling. So basically meaning if we try to log in, right, with credentials that don't match, the user won't have any sort of indication that that's wrong. So some UI friendly error handling. This isn't very UI friendly, right? It's in the console. We have got to go ahead and do, we have not done the hosting yet. The custom hook as well, we can get to in our next session.
Okay.
And hosting, I feel like custom hook and hosting we can get into. Maybe there is no sign up. I don't think that was one of the requirements. Maybe just log in. But I'd have to verify. Log in, log out. Yeah, that's all they say in the requirements there.
Okay.
Cool.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's at this point, Firebase is pretty, I would say that Firebase is configured here with our app.
It's so can quick question. So can Firebase also be used to take in information? Because like I'm doing things, I mean, like for my you're gonna see it. My capstone is like a stargazer's chart. You know, it's like what's the name of the star, who
Mhm.
first discovered it, what constellation is it in, stuff
Okay.
like that. So can Firebase also be used to collect that information and then
Mhm.
uh so it can be? Okay, because
Yeah. So
the
this, oh, I'm sorry. Mhm.
well, I was just saying that the videos they're giving me and the the template they gave me, it's not that detailed, and I talked to one of the people and they did good. It's just they didn't really answer my question on how to set it up, and they didn't say it in proper, or I'm not gonna say proper. They didn't say it in layman's English.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well,
So
okay, so we're already using Firebase for authentication and really just for authentication, right? We're just authenticating users. Or excuse me, I believe in this case would actually be we're just authorizing users, right, for access.
yeah,
Um, but we also have Firestore, which we can use to, it's basically like a database in the cloud, right?
okay.
Because everything right now, like we're storing all this information locally. And they don't, I don't see in the project requirements there that we need to like store books or changes to books or deletions of books or anything like that in Firestore.
No,
Um,
this was only during the capstone for they were talking about that.
gotcha. Yeah,
Mhm.
we could totally set up Cloud Firestore as well. I've done that with
Okay.
apps I've worked on. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can worry about that when we get to it because so we just need to finish those two things and then kind of transfer that to the other project and then so that will be done with the React if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, exactly. Just really these
Okay.
three. I mean, even this one, actually, I would say that login form is pretty much done at this point,
Okay.
right? Because we did use React hook forms for
Okay.
that particular or excuse me, React hook form. We did use that for pretty much all our forms here. Yeah.
All right. Good deal. So hopefully when you talk to me tomorrow, my voice will start returning. It's just I don't know why. It's just maybe
Yeah, it depends on the
and
day, I think. I feel like it just
well
depends.
in a
Yeah.
yeah, in a few weeks we're going to be getting the cherry blossoms, which will be nice. But you know,
Nice.
it's just the time before that is just
Yeah, it's just
so
like an explosion of nature. and pollen
Yeah.
into the
So,
air.
but
Yeah.
I'd like to go see the cherry blossoms in Japan because I know in Korea they're saying, well, they're Korean cherry blossoms. It's like, okay, probably the same. The whole
Yeah.
nationalistic
Oh yeah.
tensions and this,
There's a lot of
you
tension,
know,
like historical tension between Japan, Korea, and China.
are arguing over a little island in the middle
Yeah.
of the. It's just like, guys, we got Taiwan. Let's worry about Taiwan, then we can focus on these
Right.
little islands.
Right. Did you
So,
feel any shocks from that or where you are now in Korea or no?
uh, no, I didn't. We didn't have any of that. We had one earthquake off the coast of Jeju, and that
Oh yeah.
because the where I work, it's Songdo, and that was a muddy island that they dredged up. And
Oh
so
wow. Huh.
when you get those tremors, you can feel it a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit. But uh, well, I was just like thinking about like the mainland China and Taiwan, the tensions with that. It's like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
you got the disputed islands, I get it, but let's worry about the mother of the disputed islands right now. Let's solve that issue, then we'll worry about the other stuff. But
Exactly. Yeah, Taiwan is
yeah.
definitely I know there's a lot of like I've heard they're doing military drills around the island, right? Or they continue to do that.
Because I showed them the Artemis Accord, the Artemis program,
Mhm.
where they're trying to, put a moon base, and it says Korea's a part of it. And I said, oh yeah, Japan's a part of it too. I get some boos in the class. It's just, guys, the
Oh,
Japanese are not going anywhere. There's more of them than there are of you. Get used to it.
oh. Yeah, it is true.
So
I think they do have a higher population as well in Korea.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, their birth rate is it's 1.3, but Korea's like 0.7. So
Oh
there's
yeah,
going to be
no.
more there's going to be more Japanese in the future than there are Koreans. So get used to it.
Gotcha.
But
All
but
right, man.
anyway, just
Feel better, okay?
yeah,
Yeah. Feel better soon, man. And we'll pick up tomorrow at that time, I think
or
3:45 my time.
yeah, and then I'll just again I can set it to where my alarms can go off because I have multiple alarms set up.
Gotcha. I'm sorry to wake you up so early.
Nah,
Geez.
well, it'll give me an excuse to go to the gym early, and then
Nice. Yeah. All
so
right, man. Well, have a good evening. Feel better. And yeah, we'll talk more tomorrow, okay?
thank you. Same to you.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.